But Honorable Ssemujju, I had a complaint from Stanbic Bank that you said bad things about them. I said sorry for you, that's not what you meant, and I'm sure that's not what you meant. Because I think they called you.
No, sometimes I spoke to their MD
and cleared the air.
And I told him it was important that he listens first.
They sent me the clipping, so they listened.
Yes. My statement was, I had heard that the bank was bribing MPs, and I said I don't have proof.
Yeah.
That's what I said on the show.
That you don't have proof. Okay.
Yeah. If
Next time I'll say if you don't have proof. Next time I'll say if you don't have proof, don't allege.
No. You see, the solution is to tell me not to hear. But if I hear, I will say that I have heard.
So Ssemujju, don't hear next time.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yes. And then I have Agatha Atuhaire in the studio. Agatha, you're most welcome to Gang once again.
Thank you, Oscar.
Yes, and New Vision, Sunday Vision, Saturday and Sunday Vision said you're one of the admirable women of Uganda. I don't know, did people tell you?
I saw it.
You saw it?
Actually, I complained about it.
You complained?
Because
they said she's Agora, she's what? And
they said that I am known for fighting for the rights of women and children.
And privileged people.
Yeah.
I thought that was a high
it's not what I am known for. They feared to say that I'm known for fighting against bad governance, and which includes those, but mainly that saying.
But you can say it now. You are known for fighting bad governance.
Maybe they feared to say because that would implicate the majority shareholder. But I was glad that I was on the list of most admirable women.
And if I didn't say it, I can say it now. You know, if anyone crosses you, they'll really get fire. So excellent. Then in the studio, I have Mr. Tony. When the Trump government came in...
I have not introduced Dr. Ayume very well.
Yeah. Oh, please go on.
He has been the chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Health, and in my view, one of the best chairperson.
Wow. Accolades. You know Ssemujju.
Thank you very much.
When he says something coming from him, that's a big thing. Yes, because banks complain about him just mentioning them, and now for you he says positive in the first, straight away. But yes, so congratulations to you on leading that committee. But what are the consequences of not having USAID funding in Uganda?
Thank you very much. I think it's not only for Uganda, but globally. I think it's not only for Uganda, but globally, because the United States government through USAID funds a lot of things. PEPFAR was one of their biggest flagships since 2003. That was from the Bush administration. Then they also contribute a lot to the World Health Organization. About 15%.
When you say things like PEPFAR, you need to help Agatha.
PEPFAR is a presidential emergency plan for AIDS relief.
Right.
It came at the beginning of the century. That was 2003. It was a flagship of the Bush administration. And that's when HIV was a pandemic at its peak. So they introduced PEPFAR, and it's been a game changer, providing ARVs and so many services related to combating HIV/AIDS all over the world. And it has given families in Uganda hope. People have lived longer. There are people who have now had HIV for over 30 years, living with it, and they look well. Now, with shutting down of this USAID funding, and even the one to WHO, a number of services are affected. The US government also funds Gavi. That's the Global Alliance for Vaccines. We know the importance of vaccines.
But that has been suspended before here in Uganda?
Yes, for some reasons, but it is back.
Right.
So when you try and understand the different areas that it funds, if you now put it into service delivery, like people living with HIV, that means issues like access to medicines. And when you interrupt access to medicines, that means you have issues like resistance, poor quality of life, and the part I don't want to say is death. That's same for TB, for malaria, and even for things like infrastructure. But not all hope is lost. There was a stay on some of those directives, and I think a 90-day window was given. I think they revisited and said, let's give 90 days and study it. What is necessary? What can we do without? And going forward, I think our fingers are crossed. What is going to be their decision at the end of the 90-day period? And I think the options are about three. Will they stay their decision? Will they partially cut? Or will they continue with the funding? I think that's what we need to pray to. But I think it also gives us an opportunity to internally do some soul searching and reflect. They had actually, development partners had given us a 10-year roadmap for a drawdown on funding. So this did not catch us by surprise. It is not new. It's just that we were scaling down. We had planned to do that over 10 years. And they had done the costing and how much we needed to bite in as they do a drawdown. When I was chairman of the Health Committee of Parliament, in the budget of 2023-2024, we actually put 50 billion shillings, government of Uganda funding, towards the HIV budget. So there's been commitment on the side of government to do that.
Yeah. So can we say, sorry, just a little bit before I ask this particular one of whether we can survive without it. So at this moment in time, USAID is working over the 90-day period, or just some parts of USAID and funding for Uganda?
I think they tiered it that areas that are of critical nature,
right,
will still, because there are people who are back to work. Remember that when this pronouncement came, people were told to go home. But it was revisited a week later, and they said areas that offer critical services will be spared. And without going into the details, when they unpacked the funding areas and to which groups some of their funding was going to, for us here at the top, we just see $292 million US funding to government of Uganda. But when you unpack and go into the details, some of it, not all of it goes to treatment. Some of it is for procurement, some of it may be for construction, some of it may be for advocacy, workshops, information, education and communication. So they had to go back and revisit that, which are the critical areas. If I took an area like West Nile, because for it is CDC funded, it's not really been so much affected apart from the TB programs. But then there are other regions of the country that are purely USAID, and those will be affected significantly. If I focus on a disease like malaria, the USAID contributes $30 to $33 million for our malaria budget. And all the other areas have been cut apart from indoor residual spraying, which is about $9 million. So $24 million has been shelved off. We are going to continue with the $9 million towards indoor residual spraying, and areas like mosquito nets, anti-malarials, test kits, we will have to look internally and look for that money.
And when you think about it, Uganda had not reached a stage of treating malaria or manufacturing mosquito nets, treating TB, so we still needed aid for these age-old illnesses.
Let me try and put this into context. For 20 years ago, we had a pandemic. 30 years ago, HIV appears on the scene, and it changes the shift of health service delivery. All the attention now goes to HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria, and there were huge cost centers in health service delivery, and that's why things like cancer treatment and non-communicable diseases suffered. It was a huge financial strain on budgets across Africa, and Uganda was one of them. So all these partners came in because a pandemic means something that transcends boundaries, meaning it was also a threat to the health of citizens beyond Africa. But I think they have really held us for some time, about 20 to 30 years. And it is time that our economies have improved. And we need to start also, we cannot hinge our entire health sector budget or part of it in the hands of well-wishers, philanthropists, and donors. And like I told you, they had given us a 10-year roadmap. And I think government has been compliant over time. And one of the issues I've given you is the 50 billion we put towards that, and other areas, infrastructure and all that.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to say that Dr. Yume is NRM MP of Koboko.
Former son of Speaker.
I didn't want to say former son of anything, but MP of NRM was enough. So I don't know if I take you to Kawempe, you would manage Kawempe.
No, I have voters in Kawempe who stay in Kawempe and in Chira.
Yes.
So you can take Ssemujju
introduction was a
Please
good
don't
one.
come to Chira.
So, Honorable Ssemujju, we have Kahunga Masiko, who is always a positive influence. He says Trump is the twig strike Africa and Uganda needed to sharpen ourselves. So time to think priorities, okay? Reduce cabinet, reduce whatever, and manage ourselves. Are you in the same line? Or do you see this USAID leaving Uganda as a gift or as trouble?
You see, my last interaction with the Minister for Health, Dr. Ruth Acheng, after the enactment of the anti-homosexuality bill by Parliament, there were threats to cut aid. Dr. Yume, who is knowledgeable in that area, can help me. But she told me, if I got her right, that 80%, either it is her or Dr. Yume in his report, who said 80% of our health budget is donor funded. 80%. And at that time, she was moving from one European capital to another because there is, I think, money that comes in from country and one that is aggregated either by EU and so on and so forth. But the threat was almost by all of them to cut it because of that law. And she said she had succeeded. Many had reconsidered. So that is the situation of our health in Uganda, that we are contributing as a country only 20%. He can put me right if I'm wrong. So any withdrawal will substantially affect that area. The trouble is that, Oscar, there are things that you think government will abandon, will stop funding, but they don't stop. I remember when the Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi was Shadow Minister for Finance. I think we were during the COVID period around 2020, and in his response to the budget, he outlined at that time things that we did not need to fund, or at least to the tune that was allocated, from workshops to travel abroad, travel inland, fuel, buying of vehicles, etc. And the figure was coming to about 7 trillion shilling. When the president was presenting a budget to Parliament, he pretended that these things were not by Mwanga Chivumbi now. He said a team of General Sale has actually advised me we can save 7 trillion. And he was referring to the same things. But that was his speech presenting the budget. But the actual budget, the things remain. Even as of today, those things remain. I have, when I took over from Mwanga Chivumbi, each budget cycle made a similar presentation. But why don't we stop funding, or at least reduce the funding of things that are avoidable? You see, the people in the Ministry of Finance, they don't use words like luxury, they call them, I have forgotten the word they use, but
non-essentials.
No, there is a word they use there, I will remember. But even the budget of this financial year, next financial year, you have about 300 billion for workshop. You have about 100 now billion shilling for travel abroad. You have 700 billion for inland travel. Usually the focus is on travel abroad. But when you look at the government vehicles on the road, returning from weekend with Chaco, the amount of money we spend on inland travel is 700 billion. Replacement of vehicles about 200, maintaining the vehicles about 150 billion. Special meals. The other day I was asking journalists to photograph. We were attending a committee, a parliamentary committee meeting. They brought mandazi, brought chapati, brought everything, and the MPs did not even consume 5%, and all that was taken back. So if you go to every government meeting, all those things are provided.
Yeah, but you government people don't want to eat those things because you fear a lot.
No, not just fearing. But you see, I don't think there is an MP who will leave his home and come to Parliament to have breakfast at 10. But in the technical people, that is an item in the budget that doesn't go away, and the total of that is 300 billion shilling. And even when you make arguments and make a presentation to Parliament, they will not remove them. Because what I see with the budgeting is that the items remain the same. Just change the figures. If it is 250 this year, next year is 260, but the items are never revised. So you are, I'm not saying we have enough money to fund our priorities, but what we have can replace the money that is being withdrawn if it is properly deployed. But I'm not sure that it will be properly deployed, because while it may appear like a mandate for MPs, it is someone else's business. People in government who are providing these things. So the moment you withdraw it, you have withdrawn the business from them. So they will maintain them because they are the suppliers. But maybe inevitably, because once money is no longer there to provide the thing that Dr. Ime has outlined, they may have no option but either to reduce on the mandazi or the other items. But this budget, the budget of this financial year and next financial year, which begins in July, all those items are still there. But speaking broadly about budget, Uganda collect taxes that fund nearly half of the budget. The rest of the money is borrowing and money that is given to us. You saw that with COVID, Oscar. Almost all the vaccines that we used for COVID were all donated. And that's why we had argument with the government. Because the money they committed to buy a vaccine, eventually the Auditor General said vaccine is worth about 300 billion, if the report of the Auditor General had that, expired. And then you go for, so they had to go and destroy them. And the cost of that destruction was either 9 billion, then they had to use money for vaccine to go and destroy the expired drugs. So the management, you need to tighten the management of the health sector itself, because this is the first time. There was time they supplied us with the sugar-related medicine in Wakiso, yet we needed malaria. I was with Dr. Bukenya Gilbert. We went for a meeting of MPs, Professor Gilbert Bukenya, meeting of MPs from Wakiso. And then he was quarreling, you guys, you mean even basic things like a disease incident, you can't get them right. how do you begin giving us too much medicine for sugar-related pressure? Yet we don't have enough medicine for malaria. So you need to tighten the management of the health sector, and then you deal with the other issues in the budget that even if you don't fund them, life will not come to an end.
Let me go to Agatha before coming to you, Tony. Nora Oraga, regular listener, and sometimes a panelist here, said she agrees with an economist, James Shikwati, Kenyan, I know him. If this USAID loss gives Africa breathing space, the stronghold that Africa has had is made to be believed as the narrative that it's poor when it is actually rich. So maybe the American president has given us a chance. That's coming to you, Agatha. And then I spoke to a senior journalist, said, no, it's much more than health, this USAID thing. For you, what do you think?
So, first, I agree that it's much more than health. And I will even agree from my personal perspective that USAID was funding our operations at Agora 100%. So
you are the people who are in that 4 million. We kept wondering who's receiving.
So it means that from just my side, you have 13 jobs that are on the verge of being lost. Yeah. But altogether, I think USAID was supporting organizations that were employing over 40,000 Ugandans. So yeah, you're looking at over 40,000 jobs lost. You're looking at over $400 million out of the economy. So yeah, that's bad. But coming to, I think Nora's comment, and also saying that we are rich, that this is an opportunity for us to. So the health sector in this country, and the health expert here can tell us, is funded over 50% by the external people. Over 50%. And of that over 50%, USAID was funding 80% of that. So it's about 261 billion for AIDS, it's about 100 billion for malaria, it's TB and all that. So I think that's a problem. But people who think that our governments will care about that should look at, since January, since Trump came to power, we've passed 3 supplementary budgets. 3. So since the year began, there's been a supplementary budget passed each month. January, February, and March. If you looked at those supplementary budgets, because ideally a supplementary budget should have come for an issue like this, the freezing or the suspension of USAID, because that's an emergency. You have people whose lives were depending on this. So you'd expect that in this supplementary budget, they are coming to address this. An issue that goes to the very people's existence. You have about 1.5 million people living with HIV. You have malaria that you cannot treat. You have TB that you cannot treat, and these many other diseases. But what does our supplementary budget have every time it comes? The first item is always State House. So this
one had coffee, that's why I invited him.
Yeah, as one of them. But the first one is still State House, about 8 billion. You wonder what emergencies happen that people didn't plan for to give to State House. We've never had any emergencies in State House. The floods of the other day should have been proper emergencies. But you don't see something like that. So you have State House getting lots of money month in now, month out. You have the Ministry of Defense and military, but you don't have anything about USAID cuts. So the priorities that Honorable Ssemujju was talking about, we have not seen that change since January, when this issue came up, when they realized that there's no USAID funds to count on. We have not seen that addressed in supplementary budgets, but also we haven't seen it addressed in the budget discussion that is happening now for the next.
In some ways, you're being kind to Dr. Charles Ayume here, because he's NRM. He has not been shouting out, basically. That's what you're saying.
Well, I think
that's what you're saying.
I actually
because
think he
even
has.
in his presentation,
but
he has been,
I have seen him shout out, because you see, even NRM people are as frustrated as us. I saw him shouting recently. Was it after this financial year's budget was passed, sent to the president, and the president trashed it, sent it back with orders. Your reallocations, I don't want to see them. And I saw him that time lamenting, like the rest of us. So maybe he has shouted.
But on the USAID hasn't lamented yet. He keeps saying, in 3 months' time, we're going to see.
Well, so I want to tell him that as a doctor, he should know that patients don't have 3 months without any whatever. So at least this is where we should have seen the government come in to bridge these gaps, at least with the plan that we are working on this, that we are now. The budget was already, I think, the discussion under when this happened. You'd expect a government to, realign, have other discussions, and we see that because the budget is about to be passed. I think this should be this month or this coming month of April or May.
Yeah.
So those are issues we would have expected to see.
To be in a supplementary.
But the priorities are still the mandazi that Honorable Ssemujju talked about, State House, military to participate in elections in 2026, the army and all that, and I think it's worrying. Not that we expected any better, but we had maintained some hope.
Mr. Tony Muguya, this is a chance to welcome Honorable Abdul Katonto. Welcome to Gang. I think you passed via Mawanda Road.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't advise anybody to take that.
You can take it, but plan ahead. Yes, I was a bit surprised as well.
First of all, I want to appreciate Oscar for serving us with very nice Ugandan coffee, and I want to encourage all Ugandans to drink coffee roasted in Uganda. Star Cafe is one of our own brand, very good coffee. So if we drink more of this, then we will help to boost our economy.
We have 3 people here who don't take anything because of Ramadan. Maybe from next week they'll take.
Next week, surely.
But for us, we shall enjoy the cafe. And you've done a kalango for Star Cafe that powers the gang.
Yeah, Star Cafe and others are actually out there for us to drink. Talking about budgets, this is an African problem. If you look at the contribution of coffee to our economy, coffee exports account for about 18 to 20%. That's about $1 billion of export earnings. But we are producing about 20% per acre of what Vietnam, which is another coffee country, is producing. So I think we have potential if we increase production per acre.
Don't go into coffee yet. That's
no, I know.
Okay, we're still on USAID.
Yeah. So basically, we think that by increasing coffee incomes, we have a target of increasing to $5 billion of export earnings. We shall be able to cover most of our own budget requirements. So as
you're optimistic.
Yes, that's what I think. If we do it, we can. So there's really a self-reliance requirement that we as Africans need to do than to think of USAID being the one to fund our own priorities.
Tony, let's wait for the next topic and we'll probably murder you there. Because I don't know if you're a recipient of 127 billion.
Not at all.
Not at all. So, Honorable Abdul Katonto, you've been listening in as you came in. We were talking about the loss of USAID, the gaps created in the medical industry, health sector, and wider, like Agatha has pointed out. And Agatha today has been gentle, maybe because she's seated next to Dr. Ayume. You're a lucky man. Usually should have been saying, you NRMs, you are not doing this, you are not doing this. A Koboko man, maybe.
Let me also declare some interest that he's been my friend since before he became an MP. But I will.
So you have a few NRM friends.
I will come for him if I find reason to. That can save him. Yeah.
Okay. So the loss of USAID, Agatha puts it to us as, how come there's no noise? And in maybe 3 months' time, we're going to have trouble?
where there's no crisis.
Hmm?
There's no crisis. It's only when there's a crisis that will have the noise.
Is that how we operate?
That's how we operate. You see, you wait when the figures start coming. And for example, from the Minister of Health, that this particular month you've had this and this, the number of people losing their lives because of HIV has increased and so on, blah blah. Then you'll make the noise. As of now, that crisis is not there because the figures have not started coming out. Maybe when Minister of Health starts coming out the figures, that's when we shall make noise.
Is it like when we had a long heat, sunshine and so on, and no one fixed the drainages, and then when the floods came?
Absolutely.
And we are saying, hey, floods.
Yes. Hey, you people, what has been happening? I think that's... But let me say this. You see, what is happening in the US today is that it depends on which side Donald Trump has woken up on that morning. And you've seen it with the tariffs. Today, tomorrow, the other day, it changes like weather. You can't be sure of what he's going to do next. So even now, we don't know whether this is going to be sustained in the long run, or tomorrow you wake up and say, by the way, after the 19 days, I am doing a drawback on some of these policies and so on. So, but having said that, let's look at, and my best examples are countries like South Africa, countries like North Korea, countries like Iran. Because of the world sanctions, and many of them, for example, between Iran and North Korea by the West, these countries have managed to grow capacities to some very, very impressive levels. South Africa did that during apartheid, and it grew eventually to sustainable capacities. Iran has done that. North Korea has done that. Maybe this is an opportunity for the begging world. What I don't believe in is this, that, we are now in trouble. There is this very big magnanimous person. We shouldn't be in this place in the first place. It is time for the African countries or the begging world to grow their own capacities. Because when you look at our economies, they are weak, yes, but we can achieve the minimum. We can achieve the minimum. And Oscar, because let us look at it. Even if we are to turn up off the entire donor funding, how much money are we going to lose? And if we look at prioritizing our own expenditures as a country, prioritizing it, how much money can we save? When I was driving in, I had the Ssemujju talking about mandazi. Of course, I think when he talks about mandazi, he wants to speak to the ordinary person to get the point. But it is bigger than mandazi. Where are our priorities? Is it that this country cannot afford to pick this bill, or a reasonable part of it? My own view, and the honest view of many people, is we can. We can, absolutely. So, to me, this could be, what do the English people say? That for every dark cloud, there is that silver lining. And the silver lining is, guys, we now need to know that there is no free lunch. These Agathas who have been picking a lot of money said, I was coming, said they are blah, blah. You should now grow your capacity to fund your own activities, other than somebody saying he's picking you and picking your bills, and tomorrow is busy saying, no. Yes.
If the government has failed to look after its sick people, why are you expecting us activists to get money to fund activities?
I'm talking about both of you. Let me tell you, whether it is you or government, I'm actually talking to everybody, all of us who are thinking that there is Big John in DC who should be picking our basic bills. We can afford to do it. It's just about discipline. It's about tightening our belts and getting our priorities correct. And I can tell you, eventually we will. Let's just have this crisis. Sometimes, for those who are parents, if you have a kid and you want this kid to know that this thing, and you sometimes let him touch it, and then you will not touch it again. It's part of growing up. I don't know whether you've read that book of who developed who, whether it is Europe or Africa, who developed who, and so on. These are the sort of circumstances we should be discussing. So, is it bad? Maybe yes, maybe no. Can we do better? Absolutely. And I think, Oscar, I'm not one of those guys who are really crying and I'm losing sleep and so on over the loss. I'm losing sleep because what can we do to sort out this mess? That is what we should be preoccupied with, other than like saying, no, this guy should continue giving us money. You know, we literally become beggars. And at some point, we don't have to beg. And let me give you an example as I go for the microphone. The Western world, Europe, was debating basically on DC for many things, including their own national security. Today, they realize that because the biggest alliance post World War II, political alliance, has been the US and the Western Europe, the so-called NATO, the biggest political alliance. Now, Europe knows that there is no longer a big boy to protect them. And you know what they're doing now? They are revising their defense budgets and so on, because now they know that Washington
actually
will not
been
be
galvanized.
there. Sorry? Oh, they have been. They have been. And that's why a few even of pounds or euros coming also, forget about the US, coming here, also going to be turned off, because now they're also reorganizing their own societies and so on. So the world has changed thanks to Trump, and I think we may in the short run suffer, but maybe that's what we need.
I wanted to say just something small. So when this order first came up, there was a letter from the Ministry of Health telling people to go home.
Days.
Yeah, at the beginning in Jan. So this was telling some of the health workers to go home because the project was being funded by USAID and there's no money. And it ended by saying, but they can stay and be patriotic. And, yeah, that letter is there by Diana Twine. I have it. You know what's strange is that 2 days after that letter, politicians were asking for vehicles. The parliament, no, parliament, the leadership of parliament was asking for money for vehicles. So you have on one hand an important issue like health and telling people to go home, but you have on the other people budgeting for more vehicles. So and that goes to the prioritizing that everyone was speaking about here. In fact, I remember someone asking on Twitter, say, can we tell also politicians to be patriotic and work for free, but you expect doctors to work for free? And like I said, Oscar, it's been 3 months. We have not seen a single measure talked about that this is how we are going to stand in the gap that USAID is leaving behind, and over critical issue like health, like medicine for patients.
I advise you to engage finance and Minister of Health. I think there are contingent plans that are doing it, especially in the next financial year, to bridge that gap. They're really doing it. That's just read the documents now of the next budget.
Dr. Ayume is here, but what Agatha is saying, some people may not be able to wait 3 months. And here, finally, I found, he did say, Dr. Charles Ayume did shout out on Twitter, says, okay, the US has their own rights to make decisions, but you as a doctor and a member of parliament, what are you going to tell the 1.2 million people living with HIV and AIDS in Uganda? And when the stockouts happen, and you ask them to reconsider the decision. So you've done some mild shouting out, Dr. Ayume.
Yes, I at the beginning,
the key word here is mild.
I tweeted on Trump's handle, but whether I'm sure that he has handlers who read it. But I want to say that government is taking all the necessary measures. I think when we were in one of the NRM caucus sittings in State House in February, we raised the issue to His Excellency the President. Unfortunately, Ssemujju has not come, but if you had come to one of those sittings, you would have you'd have been able to get it firsthand. But we raised that issue, and to His Excellency the President, and it was deferred back. So they are behind the scenes discussions going on. Ministry of Health officials are doing countrywide visits of regional referral hospitals and districts to do the assessment. One of the areas that's going to really be affected is staffing, because some of the projects, you find 70% of the HIV run facilities, either at districts or in regional referral hospitals, are funded by USAID. So it is not a top-bottom decision, but Ministry of Health is making deliberate efforts to go there and plan with the workers at what can we do. One of the issues being proposed is integration of services, because most of these programs have been coming with verticalization. You find a very beautiful HIV-built clinic in one corner of a hospital or of a health center but we are saying, can we now integrate services so that all the staff within a health facility at the district are able to take care of non-communicable diseases, of HIV, of TB, as we look at incremental funding for staff recruitment. When I was chair of the health committee, to address some of the issues of human resource, we did a costing of 100 billion shillings to ensure that all the hospitals had certain cadres of health workers. The entire budget is about 4 trillion shillings, and that's a sector budget if we look at the National Development Plan for recruitment. But we are saying, can we start with 100 billion shillings?
Yeah.
And I would want to thank the Ministry of Finance that the last financial year they gave us 20 billion shillings to recruit.
Of the 100?
Yes. Of course, we didn't say we wanted...
100. The desire was 4 trillion.
No, 4 trillion is...
They changed it to
100.
For the 100, and is thanking finance for giving it 20.
But you see, Honorable Ssemujju, 4 trillion is the ideal with the new revision, because we now have super specialized services and all that. But there is no point in giving a rural regional referral 100% staffing when there are issues to do with accommodation, equipment. So we have said that this is over a 10-year period. The ideal would be 4 trillion. What we proposed to Ministry of Finance was give us 100 billion over 5 years. And I'm happy to say this, that last financial year we were given 20 billion to address 5 critical hospitals. That was Kayunga, Yumbe, Entebbe, Chirudu, and Kawempe. So there's goodwill on the side of government. The second point is integration of services to avoid that verticalization as we explore other measures for domestic financing. And I think one of them that has been at cabinet level for some time is the National Health Insurance Bill. Plugging wastage, corruption. I think Honorable Ssemujju talked about issues to do with governance. That money can be found. We just have to be a bit intentional.
Dr. Ime, preparing for this topic, I was told that it's not just the people you've talked about as human resource, that people have these jobs, then they have a contract, then they have other people they have got to pay. And when this all ceases, some people are in dire straits.
Yes, and that's why I told
like
you.
Like subcontractors and so on.
And that's why I mentioned, and I've sent you a tweet, I think from the US government, where they had said
that they have reconsidered. They
have reconsidered for some life-threatening emergencies and so forth. But issues like workshops, capacity building, advocacy,
family things,
yes, those can be shelved off. So our prayer is that in the next...
This is by Nick Schifrin.
You know, also, Oscar, much as we may be here crying about this, the US also has the government has a responsibility to its own citizens. That's why they have come up with this DOGE, the Department of Government, which is trying to look at what they call a wastage. Are they looking at, and you know, I sort of appreciated when some time back Donald Trump, president, was reading exactly how much money was being spent in which country over what.
He unpacked it.
Yes, when he unpacked and goes in the details, I don't think the American taxpayer would certainly be happy that his tax is being used for some of those activities. So what they are trying to do is also rationalization, to look at where exactly they can really assist and there is a need, and where they think it is wastage, really, they also have both a political and a moral obligation to cut the wastage. We cannot cry because they are cutting wastage on us.
It's interesting. Nora again says the cost of a gen expert machine needed for testing TB and managing HIV can be about 90 million Uganda shillings. So this would be like 2 MPs. Two MPs, lots of 2 salaries.
We have to be frugal and intentional about where we allocate resources. But I think this money can be found even from within our budget.
And you see, even planning, you remember when we had just come this particular parliament, I was privileged to chair a committee, and Charles Sear was one of my committee members on COVID. And you could see the wastage. You know, for example, you do an ICU, you get you buy an ICU equipment, but you've not constructed the place where to install it, and that equipment is in the store. There are so many wastages like that. You've already spent money. You need ICU facility. The equipment is there.
Well, we can answer a direct question. Has the Ginger ICU started working, Ginger Hospital?
No, unfortunately. but let me put this into context. Is that
Agatha is on. You know that seat is the hot seat. The Ofonopondo seat is the NRM seat. So people have been gentle.
Trust Charles. Charles is he has his stuff. He knows his stuff.
Let me put this into context.
It's not any other person.
For an ICU to function, you need the equipment, you need the infrastructure, and then you need the human resource.
Yeah.
So much as we had done well on the equipment,
for Ginger Hospital,
you can fast track procurements for all over the country.
All over the country.
But
all over the country.
No, but Ginger has the ICU equipment.
Yes.
What other
we had even other equipments all over the country.
All over hospitals. Now the issue was to remodel some of the buildings, and that takes time. Even when you've done that, you need to...
Dr. Yume, who is remodeling what? They're only remodeling Mulago.
No, I'm saying where you're going to put the ICU, because
right.
you need to repurpose and then make the building better so that it conforms to ICU and infection prevention control standards. But then you also need to recruit anesthesiologists, critical care workers, and so forth. So
and they are there.
All that is a
They are not there.
No, they are not there.
You see, in his own report, Dr. Yume, the last I interacted with, Mulago, when you aggregate, because Mulago doesn't have an ICU unit in one place, you can go to
Heart Institute,
and they have, and then another one. They are supposed to have 28 beds. Only half are working. Staff not there. So the beds are there, the equipment is there. Even they don't need to construct rooms for them, but they don't have staff to operate them.
Government, before that, ICU used to have about 12 beds. Now, when Mulago was refurbished, they took the bed capacity to 28. But then we need to recruit extra staff to be able to operationalize. Because one ICU...
Where have the staff gone?
You see, when you increase the bed capacity, one ICU bed needs about 3 intensive care nurses, 1 per 8-hour shift. So if you're 24 hours...
But we don't have them.
No,
they are not there.
They are not there.
Where have they gone?
Now,
We don't have them.
We have
they don't go anywhere if they are not there.
The State House now has 28.
We have been passing our funding requests to the budget committee.
Nurses and medical
Ssemujju
doctors,
system.
28 in State House. I don't know who is seeking.
But it has always been an unfunded priority. So if they can give us those nurses...
And this came out, remember, Charles, in our report 4 years ago. And we discussed this in detail. So look here, for these ICs to function, you need this sort of stuff. 4 years ago, up to date. Every year, the health
They are not
committee
here.
is recommending, you know.
Agatha is about
and
to say Charles is also lamenting.
No, but
But isn't he?
There's a report. You just have to read the reports. Charles has done his work really, and if you read the reports, you know that you have somebody who knows what this.
And he's
means.
talking about the budget committee that Honorable Ssemujju sits on. He's not saying that Honorable Ssemujju always has a minority report. In this time, he authored it alone, like he's the only one who signed on it.
no,
But no one cares. The other NRM guys
but
like
to
him
put it into
will go with the majority
between
one.
Katuna and Kampala, we only have 4 ICU beds, and that is in Barara. So assuming anything happens,
With staffing.
4
That-
ICU beds.
Okay. Functional.
Katuna.
But fully
And
functional.
Kampala. But every year we put it in our health committee report, because Kamale just needs some, I think, 500 million to make their ICU operational. Same with Masaka. And on record for having said that's the price of a V8 Land Cruiser. So if we don't buy one for government, the Masaka ICU can work. It just needs 680 million to be remodeled. But the equipment is there.
The
So we
equipment
need to
has
be
been there
very intentional
for
about
years.
it.
Not that it was bought year last year.
Yeah.
It has been there for years. Most of it,
I had
we
known that GJ
inspected
equipment
them.
is there. I didn't know that other
I don't
referrals
think
also
so.
have.
We inspected them 4 years
We
ago.
inspected. And
4 years ago.
But
Okay.
there's work going on, and I think the ICU building in Arua is
Work
almost
without
finished.
staff. Your report says the staff is not there.
So,
I have mentioned that we have given hospitals money this financial year to do recruitment, and it is up to them to prioritize where do they want to put for the critical staff.
okay, so maybe we still need that USAID funding, but anyway, we'll put it in conclusion.